Thursday. New Orleans Saints have some needs, a lot of Louisiana talent in the draft. We'll get to all that in a little bit with NFL draft analyst and expert Mike Detillier. Mike, happy to have you on the air, my friend.
Good morning. Good morning. Great to be back on.
Before we go any farther, we should mention the Mike Detillier interview is brought to you by Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center, 235-4566, and CafeLolaLafayette.com. Now, you're somewhere between the Bayou and Lafayette. Where exactly are you hunkering down for the NFL draft?
Okay, for the 3 days of the draft, I'll be at WWL, and we'll cover it for 3 days, and we'll be in studio. Still haven't got the clearance to go outside, so to speak, but we'll do it, and we'll have it there for 3 straight days.
Awesome. And, of course, the New Orleans Saints have a ton of needs from linebacker to defensive back. And depending on who you talk to, there's a needed quarterback as well. Who do the Saints go with in the first round?
I've always felt that they're going to go defensive back or linebacker. It's going to be one of the two areas. I never thought they'd trade up to get a quarterback just because it would cost you so much to do it. And so at that particular point, I settled in when we went to print, which is almost a month ago, with Greg Newsome II from Northwestern State. From Northwestern out in Illinois, not Northwestern State in Louisiana. He's a guy that I saw at IMG Academy in Florida. And he's grew up right outside of Chicago. And so it was an easy one. Once he left IMG, he went back home, went to Northwestern, has been basically a 2.5-year starter. He's missed some time with some injuries. Terrific cover cornerbacks, given up 1 touchdown the last 2 years in coverage, and had the lowest percentage of completions thrown on him of any defensive back in America last year. So I thought he'd be a great fit for this defense. It was tough for me because that was a guy there that I really liked too, and Zaven Collins from Tulsa. I actually scouted Zaven for a Louisiana college when he came out of high school. He played quarterback, wide receiver, tight end. He punted, kicked, played strong safety, free safety, linebacker. Was a middle-of-the-road recruit and settled in at linebacker. He was terrific last year. He was just a dominating football player, not only against the run, but also in the pass coverage part of the game. If people remember watching the end of the Tulane Tulsa game, he was the guy that came up with the interception that won the game for Tulsa. So it came down to those two players, to be honest with you. So we'll see what happens with those two. But I really think it'll come down to what position's available, and it's either going to be at corner or at linebacker.
So, in your mind, a first-round trade for a quarterback or for anything else for that matter is out?
For a quarterback you're talking about?
Yeah, or a first-round trade for that matter for anything. The Saints possibly moving up to get someone who's high on their list?
No,
or even
I would never rule that out, only because of Sean's history.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back, I mean, if he's liked a player, he's willing to give up capital to go out and get him. We saw that with Brandon Cooks a few years back. We also saw it certainly with Marcus Davenport. You know, he's willing to move up to get that guy. But when people are talking about the quarterback position, my thing is you got to get into that top 7 or 8 to do that. Which one of those teams want to drop to 28? Okay?
Yeah.
It looks great for you if you want to do it, but it doesn't look great for them. And so, you know, you spend a lot of time and effort and money when you look at the type of players that you're going to get. So if you're picking 7th, 8th, or 9th, you sort of go through that top, 12 players and who could be available for you. And when you stray outside of that, that's a different thing. You better give up a lot to do that. And so it would be a real long shot to get into a top 10. But trading up, I would never rule that out with Peyton. Never.
Mike Detillier on Acadiana's Morning News, brought to you by Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center. Is a future quarterback on the roster, or do you think the Saints make a move later in the draft or in free agency to bring somebody else in?
I think they'll bring someone else in, but I think for 2021, that quarterback is Jameis Winston. I mean, I can read the tea leaves pretty good. I know Sean's got to say what he's got to say with Taysom Hill. But bottom line is that position, the baton has been handed over to Jameis Winston to see what he can do. And we'll see in 2021 how far this goes. Because basically both of them are playing on one-year contracts.
Ooh, yeah.
Those dummy years thrown on Taysom Hill's contract, he's never going to see those years. So, you know, it's definitely Jameis's job for 2021 and see how well he can progress with it. If not, then you're going to have to go outside the team and get that guy. Because Taysom, I think, is a terrific football player, especially in that joker quarterback position where he's a runner, he can play receiver. You know, he's played on special teams, does a lot of different things there to help your team win. But he's not accurate enough as a quarterback, game in, game out, that you're going to look at him and say that's the guy. So I think it's Winston in 2021. Beyond that, I'm going to say there's a lot of question marks.
And what do you think, how do you think he's going to perform? What would you say?
I think based on pass record, you're going to see some really good moments, and you're going to see a lot of inconsistent moments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your track record sort of tells you what you're going to do. Now, look at him at Tampa, and he's had some really good quarters and really good games, and yet I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly with Jameis all in one series.
Mm.
And I think part of it is just his makeup as a player. All his life, as a kind of young man and into being an adult, he's always had that great arm strength, that shotgun that he can put the ball in between defenders. If you look at a guy like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and Brady, they're not necessarily that type player. They're the type of guy, they didn't have that machinery to throw it really in between a lot of different people. So accuracy and touch became their part of the game. With Jameis is the quick twitch memory skills that I look to see, can Sean Payton improve that? Because what I saw in him at Tampa, he made the same bad throw game in, game out. He's taking a chance because he does have that whip for an arm, and he can throw it. And so how do you break that? And you can say, well, it's, you know, you can change it. Nah, you can change a little bit, but if that's part of what you do, it's part of what you do. It's like a major league pitcher that, you know, every once in a while he might win 20 games, but most of his career he's 15 wins, 13 losses. You know, it's in that range. And, you know, so it's really difficult to change that part of the game with him. The one thing I do know is this offense is going to look different in 2021. Sean is not going to force Jameis to run his offense. Sean's going to adapt to what Jameis does best. He did it with Bridgewater when he had to play. He did it with Taysom Hill when he had to play. Sean's going to adjust offensively. This is all up to Jameis now of how well he can get those plays on a consistent basis. And we've been spoiled with Drew because he's been so consistent in doing what he had to do out on the field. Now, Father Time is undefeated and unbeaten for a reason. And he caught up with Drew the last couple of years.
Yep. Yeah.
But that consistency, game in, game out, Drew was so good at. And I suspect we're going to see similar moments to what we saw in Tampa with Jameis, and that he'll look great one game, other game not so maybe as well. And I think that'll vary during some games. It's part of his nature as a player.
Mike Detillier on Acadiana's Morning News, brought to you by Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center. You mentioned Jameis Winston at quarterback. He did grow exponentially under Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich's tutelage in his final season in Tampa, and I'd imagine he's grown some during his time in New Orleans as an understudy to Drew Brees and learning under Sean Payton. Offense will look different. With that in mind, do you think the Saints either later in the draft or in the offseason pick up some of this Louisiana talent that's entered the draft? You look at Trey Regis and Elijah Mitchell from the University of Louisiana. You look at Racey McMath at wide receiver, Terrence Marshall Jr. at wide receiver, Torrey Carter at fullback. Is there a chance the Saints take a chance on one of these Louisiana players, one of these Louisiana college players, and bring any or all of them in to their fold for this new-look Saints offense?
Well, it's always that possibility, but that track history tells you it's not going to be from LSU. Those guys have been few and far between. And so however you want to cut that, it is what it is. So you could say it's possible. Anything's possible. But, you know, there's only one guy that knows that, and that's Sean Payton. You know, he isn't really in control of this draft. I hear all this hootenanny about Jeff Ireland and all this other stuff. Let me tell you how it really breaks down, because I've been around a lot of those scouts, guys that are involved with the Saints, and they tell you point blank. Scouts go out, make their evaluations, they put up the board, Jeff Ireland sets it up, they give it to Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton. Sean and Mickey go behind the scenes, they reset the board. They put that board to how they like that player, how they fit, how Sean feels about him. So the initial information comes in from the scouting department and from Jeff Ireland. But that final board is Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis. That's how it's done with the Saints. So while Jeff is part of the process, at the end, there's only one guy holding the chalk in his hand, and that's Sean Payton. People say, oh, yeah, but later in the draft, he got to rely on the scouts. Oh, really? Did he rely on the scouts last year when he picked Tommy Stevens?
Not at all.
That was Sean's pick. Come on. You got to use a little common sense here. So Sean has a tremendous amount of say on the draft, and not that he doesn't have all that information that area scout has given in, what Jeff has thrown in on some of the individual evaluations. But in the end, it's Sean Payton. It's Payton's call on what he wants to do. And him and Mickey kind of walk, step for step as far as selections are concerned. So as far as Louisiana guys, I wouldn't rule it out. And they do have some on the team. But, I think probably the thing I get asked most about is how come they don't pick more LSU players? And there's only one guy that can answer that. And now, I do know he's got a really good relationship with Coach O. And, Ed was on that staff in 2008. And so they have a good working relationship, despite they were both trying to get, Ryan Nielsen to coach for them, and Coach Payton kept him. But, hey, listen, that's business. And Ed understood that as well as anybody. But they got a good working relationship, and I think Coach Payton trusts if Ed tells him something about a player, that's going to be what it is.
Mike Detillier on Acadiana's Morning News, brought to you by Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center. Let's switch off the draft for a moment here and go to the New Orleans Saints. And those of you at KPEL965.com, you may have seen this story over the last day or so. Julio Jones possibly leaving Atlanta. Rumors circulating that the Falcons looking to trade the star wide receiver. If that does happen, well, first off, Mike, does Atlanta make the trade? And if they do, who's most likely to get him?
I doubt seriously they trade him. Listen, if I'm a team and a good football team, and I feel as though I'm a piece away, why wouldn't I make that call? I think a lot of times people don't realize there's a lot more talk than trade. Okay? Everybody call in on a player. Hey, what does it cost? What would it take to get him? And so I think that's what you're hearing. That, listen, I think the Falcons have probably gotten some phone calls from people that said, hey, what it'll take to get Julio? But they're not going to trade him. To win now, and fortunately they have a very patient multi-billionaire owner who's a little bit older than most owners in the NFL. So you look at the younger owners that have come in this league, they've made their money a different way, and it's been quick. So, man, don't tell me nothing about patience. I don't want to hear it. I want to win now. Look how I made my money. So don't tell me 2 or 3 years. I want to win today. For Atlanta to win today, they got to keep that core on offense intact because their defense is lousy. So Julio's part of that. And you put him and Ridley together along with Russell Gage and Matt Ryan. Defensively, you got to stop people. And maybe you might get a trade that's a Godfather deal, one that you can't turn down. But I don't see that with Julio. I think he stays in Atlanta. And I think while there's always talk this time of the year, always, about what it would take to get a player, Julio Jones stays in Atlanta.
And that's part one of our interview with Mike Detillier. We still have a good 30 to 40 more minutes of content that will be running over the next couple of days. Tomorrow, Mike will take a look at Louisiana's homegrown talent, players from LSU, Trey Regis and Elijah Mitchell from UL. They're in the draft. He'll talk about where they go, what he expects from them, and will the New Orleans Saints pick up on any of this homegrown talent? That's part 2 of our interview tomorrow with Mike Detillier. Coming in the 8 o'clock hour right here on Acadiana's Morning News, the Mike Detillier interview brought to you by our friends over at Cafe Lola in the Oil Center. Great lunch spot. If you've not been, check them out. You can even order online. That's Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center. Man, I'm losing my place here as we go along. I'm thinking about the food at Cafe Lola right now. It's Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center. You can give them a call, or better yet, go to their website, cafelolalafayette.com. You can order online, or if you're old school, you can call them at 235-4566. That's part 1 of the interview. Part 2 coming up tomorrow. We'll take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we have some breaking news, but first, this message. Cafe Lola in the Oil Center is the perfect spot for you to have lunch. Not only is it nestled in the heart of Lafayette, Cafe Lola has some of the freshest food around. If you want a crisp salad, they have it. How about a sandwich or a wrap? You can get that too. Have you had the Lola Burger? A 3rd pounder topped with grilled mushrooms, peppers, and onions. My mouth is watering just thinking about it. Or maybe you want something lighter. Try out their soup of the day and a cup of fresh fruit. It doesn't matter what you get. You can't go wrong with anything at Cafe Lola. Great food served by great people who treat you like family. That's Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard. You can eat in, you can order online, or place your order by phone. Give them a call, 235-4566, or order online at cafelolalafayette.com. That's Cafe Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the heart of the historic oil center, 235-4566, cafelolalafayette.com. Cafe Lola, when you go, tell them Ian sent you.